comment by following the steps previously noted, then press *9 on their telephone keypad. This will notify the meeting host that the caller wishes to speak. All callers using this feature will be placed in queue in the order they entered the prompt. In the event that, despite our best efforts, we're not able to provide real-time access, we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. All votes will be in alphabetical order and roll call. And I do want to thank, as always, John O'Neill from the town's IT department and our friends at WCTV who are recording this meeting for future viewing. We'll start with roll call. Selectman Bendel.
Present.
Selectman Kyra.
Here.
Selectman DePalma.
Present.
Selectman O'Mahony.
Here.
And I am present. All members are present. The board is reconvening from an executive session scheduled at 6 o'clock for the purposes of discussing collective bargaining strategy with respect to the International Association of Firefighters Local 1370 in accordance with the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town as so determined by the chairman, and further to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or other acquisition of real property at 201 Lowell Street in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town as so determined by the chairman. I ask at this time that those who can, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have transmitting to the Treasury warrants, numbers 33, 33A, 34, and 34A. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Bendel, seconded by Mr. DePalma. Discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Bendel.
Yes.
Mr. Kyra.
Yes.
Mr. DePalma.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. It's unanimous. We do have one set of minutes to approve tonight. It's the February 8th, 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Kyra, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Mr. Bendel.
Yes.
Mr. Kyra.
Yes.
Mr. DePalma.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. It is unanimous. And we will move right to our first appointment, which is with Shelley Newhouse, the health director, and William Kavanaugh, the fire chief, for an update on COVID-19. Ms. Newhouse, Chief Kavanaugh, welcome.
Hi. You'll see on the screen, that's our latest update. I figured I'd give it to you in printed form. Up on the right, as of today, we have 61 active positives and 200, a little more than 200 in quarantine, which is really nice to see that we're trending downwards. The whole state's trending down, which is nice. So hopefully we'll just keep going that way. Little worried about school vacation that we just had, but we'll see what those numbers come up with maybe towards the end of this week or next week if we see any slight uptick. Big news is that even though we're seeing vaccine across the state, if you read and you see my update, the governor has said effective March 1st that the state will be no longer supplying first dose vaccinations to local boards of health. So that's very frustrating for me and my staff, as well as the residents, because we were really ready to vaccinate our residents. We're in the same boat as every other local board of health in the state. We do have a few first dose vaccines available for some 75 plus that we'll be releasing in the next couple days, but that's it for us for first dose vaccinations. If you received a first dose vaccination with the Wilmington Board of Health, you are guaranteed a second dose. So don't worry. You may be thinking, oh, I got a vaccination on, February 4th. What about my next one? You're guaranteed that with us. So I just want to make sure that that everybody knows that. And because we've gotten a lot of phone calls, people worried after they've heard the news that local boards of health aren't getting any vaccine. What about my second shot? So that's, don't worry, they'll be able to get the second shot. So there has been some discussion about doing something regionally, but if you look at under regional collaboration, that is what we would have to be able to accomplish if we wanted to have a regional site. There's a lot of logistics involved, a lot of planning, and there's some higher ups out there that are trying to see if we can get this accomplished in or around the Wilmington area. So we'll keep you guys posted on that. So I would highly suggest everyone go on that's eligible right now to find a vaccine by using that vaxfinder.mass.gov all the time, all day long. Just keep going on, and hopefully, if you're lucky, with the luck, you'll get an appointment. So it's really just, you can't just, maybe you'll get on once and get it, but maybe it'll take you 15 times. But I think that they're adding sites and they're adding doses every day. So we really just got to keep checking that site. I don't know does anyone have any questions for me?
Mr. Bendel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief Kavanaugh and Shelley, for the update. I first of all want to just share my frustration with all of you over the decision. I really want to compliment you, Shelley. You and your staff were fully prepared, and have led me to believe you would have done a fantastic job at continuing to administer this to residents in town. Unfortunately, that won't happen after March 1st. I'm also equally frustrated by the lack of vaccines that we're receiving, but these are the cards we've been dealt. So I really appreciate you kind of transitioning to a assistance. You continue to put out valuable information. You shared with us a few minutes ago, you're down to 61 active positive. Great news. If I go back to just a month ago on the 21st of January, we put out that we had 286. A long way. Went down to 164, 138, 95, 84 to tonight 61. So we're certainly trending in the right direction. And I appreciate you putting out those updates, because I can put together a trend like that, and it's great to see it. I just have it in my notes, and it's so exciting to see the numbers go down. I want to thank our state delegation. I know we heard from State Representative Dave Robertson on Friday night. He's indicated that he's trying to push for a regional one right here in Wilmington, potentially at the Shriners. I would commend all of them and continue to encourage them to continue that fight, because it is discouraging, especially for senior residents who are now faced with having to drive to Fenway Park and find a parking spot, or travel to Gillette Stadium in hopes that they won't have to stand in line too long. So it's frustrating. Certainly, we wish it could go faster, and I think it would under your direction, but unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think you're doing a great job, and please keep it up, even though we will be changing course.
It's been, through this whole thing, this whole past year, my job's been just so busy and, a little bit stressful here and there, but this whole vaccine thing is just it's unbelievably stressful. I can't believe, it's like you're just waiting and wait for nothing, then nothing happens. So it's just so frustrating and stressful.
Can't imagine, but we really appreciate. I want you to know it. I know we say it every week, but I think I can speak. I know the people on this call right now and the people watching at home, they really do appreciate it. Every person I run into, virtually or in person, has nothing but praise for you. It's well deserved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kyra.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I echo Mr. Bendel's comments. Shelley, you and your department, and Chief Kavanaugh, Chief Desmond, just tremendous amount of work, and must be really frustrating. I can't imagine, rolling out the vaccine and preparing, and then having the rug pulled out from under you. I think it makes more sense to have our local Board of Health administer the vaccine rather than it being at these big places that they're having it to. And also want to commend Chairman Eaton for, in this packet, there's a letter to our congressional delegation of our displeasure of how they're handling the vaccine distribution. I thought that was a good letter that was sent on behalf of the board. Just a quick question, Shelley, on the people wanting the second shots, and I'm sure that they've probably been inundating you with phone calls. Will you be calling them up once the second shot vaccines come in? And how is that going to work for them?
They already have their appointments, so they will be getting a reminder. So our first second dose clinic is March 4th. So they can expect to get a reminder that yes, they show up for your second dose.
And it will be at the Shriners again, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. DePalma?
I'm going to echo my frustration too. I've talked to a number of people and they are absolutely frustrated and aggravated that our local health department is not going to be able to give these shots out. And the way they did it was to set up Shelley and her department saying, okay, you're going to be doing the shots, get ready. Forget it. We don't need you. We've got some of the best colleges and best medical facilities in the world, not the country, but the world, here in Massachusetts. And for them to make this thing an absolute embarrassment throughout the country, I mean, I believe we're at or near the bottom of the list for putting out shots. This state should be ashamed of itself. And to take it away from the local departments is just absolutely absurd. And I compliment Shelley on her responses to things. Her, the chief, both chiefs, I give you a lot of credit and a lot of praise. I just wanted to echo that, how frustrated and aggravated I am, not with the department, but with the state. They should be absolutely ashamed of themselves for what they're doing. Thank you.
Ms. O'Mahony?
So, I mean, just speaking from kind of personal experience with my own mother who lives in Burlington, I think it's very frustrating to see kind of how some towns are getting not necessarily preferential treatment, but they're getting donations from facilities that are within the town that may not be able to use the vaccine, and therefore they're able to kind of facilitate more vaccinations of their elderly population than we currently are. It's frustrating because it's how do you answer to that? It has nothing to reflect on the town of Wilmington as to why we didn't get the vaccines yet. And I think it is kind of ridiculous to kind of echo what Selectman DePalma is saying. We don't have any kind of consistent local authority right now to have the municipalities be able to administer these, and to say to our seniors, you need to go online and check. I went online for my mom and it was hit or miss. And I got an appointment through Leahy a month out. And thankfully through her Board of Health in Burlington, she was able to get one quicker. It's just really frustrating to see kind of the inconsistencies that each town is dealing with right now. And I don't think it's fair. I think it reflects poorly on us, and we can't control it. And I think it's frustrating to the seniors to see that when they have friends in other towns that are saying that they're getting their vaccinations through their Board of Health. And I want to make sure people understand this isn't something that is our fault or something that we've created. It's just kind of the nature of the beast right now. And it's really unfortunate. And I agree with what Mr. DePalma is saying, that there needs to be some consistency from the state level down. And I would hope our delegation, Rep. Robertson and Senator Tarr could perhaps see why it is that Wilmington at this point isn't getting the vaccines that we're requesting, and other towns around us are somehow able to get them, because it's very frustrating for our seniors to be on wait lists and not know when they're going to get their vaccinations.
Thank you, Ms. O'Mahony. Ms. New, I was just briefly, and I agree with each of my colleagues with some of the frustration, particularly over the last week. There have been several different changes to several different aspects of the state's guidance over the past year. And If there has been anything that has been consistent, it has been you and your department's leadership role on the local level to be able to digest and disseminate what that guidance has been. You have, I don't even want to guess at the number of phone calls that you and your staff have received over the past year from residents, from local businesses, from us to try and deal with an immediate problem or try and interpret a recently issued guidance. And certainly I'm a strong believer in local government. You have been the face of this. You are the person that residents in town have trusted with this. And I think that the best way to effectively administer the vaccine would have been through you and your staff. And I know that there has been an awful lot of work that the health department has put in to try and follow state guidance to be ready to do that. And the state changing course just last week, after having provided 100 doses of the vaccine to 23,000 residents over the previous 3 weeks. I share in your frustration. I think you would have been the more appropriate and more effective way to do it. But I do want it to be abundantly clear that you and your staff's efforts have not gone unnoticed and have not gone unappreciated. I think we are, as a community, very, very fortunate to have your leadership and your consistency, because the number of hours that you have had to put in over the past year has been, you deserve a vacation. You deserve a break. And I think you deserve the opportunity to drag us across the finish line of this. So I don't want to get too preachy, but I do want to say that you, Chief Kavanaugh, the fire department, Chief Desmond, I see you waiting in queue in the police department, and really all town departments, and we're going to hear from 2 others later on today, but it has been very much the operating procedure of getting comfortable being uncomfortable with changing guidance. So Ms. Newhouse, thank you for seeing us to this point, and I know you're going to be there in whatever capacity the state will allow you to be there to see us through it. Chief Kavanaugh, with reduced numbers, how is the fire department's operations going?
We're doing well. Par for the course, I guess is the best way to put it. We're responding to some potential COVID positives, suspected COVID. Anytime they go on those calls, they're doing what we've been doing from the jump, further disinfection of the ambulances, their selves, their equipment. So we've been doing very well. Everybody in my department who has requested the vaccine has gotten it through Shelley and the Board of Health. They've all gotten both doses. They're about, we think they're about 10 days post at this point. So Thursday, they'll be 14 days, which will give them their, fullest immunity at that point to the virus. So that works out really well. And hopefully, we can continue moving forward. And if, people come to me, or Chief Desmond's people come to him asking for the vaccine because they've changed their mind. Now they want to receive it. We've been looking toward Shelley to try to get that for them. One of the things I kind of want to bring up as I listen to everybody talk to Shelley about their disappointment, I don't know if it's fully understood how much work goes into this. This was not a 1 year. We had a pandemic and we had to figure something out. This is something that we do every single year for us to be eligible for our emergency management grants. We have to have an emergency distribution plan. And actually, it's funny, the other day, I was looking at some notes, and myself, Shelley, Lieutenant Sensabaugh, Deputy, we had sat down and discussed our emergency distribution plan before this. It was early February of last year, so it was before anything even happened. We didn't know anything was going on. It was just our annual kind of brush up on this. So This is a pretty methodical, well thought out plan that's then distributed up to the state level. So for them, I was away last week, and I was checking my email and heard that the governor pulled the vaccines from the locals. Disheartening isn't the word. I think anyone who knows me knows I'm not exactly the most level when it comes to things like this, because it really frustrating. To me, it shows that the governor has no confidence in the local boards of health to do what they're supposed to do and follow the plan that has been set forth and has been approved by the state. So extremely frustrating on my end, being the emergency management director, knowing how much time and effort and planning has gone into knowing an emergency distribution plan is just part of our emergency plan in general. So very frustrated with that. And I do feel for Shelley, because she has, her, Kim, Tracy have been doing an incredible amount of work, but this is something that was years in the making. And now when it's time to implement this plan that they require us to have, they just say, yeah, forget it, we'll give it to CVS. It's very, very frustrating.
Thank you, Chief. And I think you put an important context on this. This wasn't something that was a plan that was slapped together by Shelley or you, but rather something that we've been required to be planning for quite some time now, for years and years and years on a regular rolling basis. And it's frustrating because we were ready for this, and now we wait.
Yep, we absolutely were. I mean, I think this is the one they put the most onus on, Mr. Chair, and that's, I mean, this was the, like, we're ready for this. No matter what happened, we were ready for something, and it's extremely demoralizing. I wouldn't even say frustrating, it's demoralizing. It really, to me, as a person who's been involved in this, and like I said, I didn't think people really knew the intricacies of what we have to deal with emergency management. It's not just this year that we've kind of been pulled in. It's an ongoing thing with a team. Demoralizing that our state leaders have basically no confidence in us to handle these types of situations.
Just know that opinion is not shared by any member of this board, and by and large, the residents that live here and have gotten used to bi-weekly meetings with Ms. Newhouse and you, Chief Kavanaugh, as you folks have really been the leaders of our response on this. And thank you for the work that you've put in, whether for planning for the vaccine administration or everything else that the two of you and your respective departments have had to do over the past year. And again, I'd love to see you folks be the ones that dragged us across the finish line. But certainly your work is very much appreciated, and your leadership is very much acknowledged. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Mr. Hall?
I think it's been all said. It's clearly, no question, Shelley and Bill and others had prepared, were ready, and at the end of the day, I guess as was noted, the governor decided that he couldn't rely upon the locals.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will move next to our 7:10 appointment, which is with Terry Marciello, the Elderly Services Director, regarding COVID-19's impact on seniors and their ability to obtain the vaccine. Ms. Marciello, good evening. Ms. Marciello, you are muted.
Sorry about that. Hi, how are you?
Good, and you?
Okay. I've been sitting and listening, obviously, to this as it's going on, and I think across the board, everyone is extremely frustrated. And so taking our positions of being frustrated, put yourself in elder shoes, and they're even further frustrated. Frustrated in the sense that they feel comfortable in their own home, their own community, their own area, and being asked to go to locations that they're unfamiliar with, after being in their home for so long and not being able to see family, expecting to go to large environments with people that they don't know. So remember, in this transportation of getting to these locations, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. So it's not like you can bus these people or you know, people can gather in large groups and get there. So in the eyes of a senior and their older adults and their children, it's extremely, extremely frustrating. As the Department of Elderly Services, when the governor first started this program, it had been decided that on the day that he announced to the state of Massachusetts how they're going to put this out a few weeks back, that there are people to call the Council on Aging, which for Wilmington is Department of Elderly Services. The day you found out is the day we found out. So we were getting quite a few calls. And the difficult piece is so how to deal with these calls and what to tell the people, because all they were hearing is, there's the vaccine. And, you know, so what are we going to do? So very, very, very frustrating. And speaking to Senator Tarr's office and Representative Robertson's office, Executive Office of Elder Affairs, the Regional Massachusetts Council on Aging, you know, in our region, the directors tried to pull together to also see what we could do to support the Board of Health. Yes, as you're saying, Shelley has gone above and beyond and has been so wonderful in answering so many questions. But this is very upsetting. My staff is very overwhelmed as to feeling, because you're just like you were all saying, we're ready to do something. You see the light. There's a piece of hope, that vaccine, and then having your hands cut, that you can't do anything. You know, we're ready for action. We're ready to take care of things, and we're not being allowed to do that. So how are we helping? When it comes to the vaccines, Shelley and her department, we've been working anything that once something opens up, we're very active with them as to getting people registered. But obviously with the change with the state as of March 1st, you need to come up with a new plan as to how we're going to help the elders. So we're trying to get better educated as to the Danvers site, the Doubletree, as to and different sites that you know, that's the only really close site to our group here in Wilmington, and trying to figure out if there's a way of transporting and that type of thing, working with families. So anytime I see a large group of openings at Danvers, I try to call people that I know that can transport there. We do all the computer work and getting them registered, and then print it out, bring it to their houses, and for them to go to the appointments. We will continue to do that. And any elder that's watching that has a hard time with their computers and figuring out how in the world can I do this? Well, we will continue to help in doing that. Communication is the most important piece here. And the communication as a whole for the state is deplorable. But the communication for our community and our town and our departments is phenomenal. And that's what the community needs to realize, is that even though the state is having a very difficult time, that means that we're not going to stop as to a town and our departments, whether it be fire, police, Board of Health, and ourselves and other departments. We're still going to be there to support and make this work. But yes, talk about frustrating. I can't tell you how many calls I've made and voicing my concern. So as in other services that we, you know, doing, we've noticed with COVID overall, there's been nutrition has been a major thing, as in people are not, more and more, it's been evident that malnutrition is out there. So we're trying to, home delivered meals has increased. Let's say we had started at the beginning of the year of 2020, around 62 meals a day, and now we're up to 75, 76 meals a day. So there is a need there. So there's a grant that we've gone after and received, and we'll be helping with produce and things like that, working with our local grocery store and making that happen. But trying to reinvent the wheel in some ways as to providing services in this difficult time, because people need to see that there is a bit of hope, because there is hope. It's just how we get about it and how we finish that, go across that finish line, as you were saying, Chairman, President. So.
No, thank you, Ms. Marciello.
I know, I'm sorry about that one. Yes, it has been rather difficult. It has been rather difficult.
Ms. Marciello, thank you for sharing your frustration that I trust is born of a passion to try and help the residents here. And I'm glad to see that you've channeled your efforts and your department's efforts towards continuing to help residents, whether it's increasing the meals program, whether it's helping folks get signed up for a vaccine that might need some help doing it, and driving out those registrations to their houses. I think that's very admirable and not at all surprising that you're doing what you can to help folks in town that could benefit from it.
Thank you. Thank you. The other thing is that really important that we're trying to keep it as a routine as much as possible. And one such way is our income tax program. I'm happy to say that we are running it. Actually, we're full. We have approximately over 125 appointments that have been made. And so what's happening is on Tuesdays, we have the volunteer AARP. What they're doing is everyone's staying, they have an exact appointment. When an elder comes for the appointment, they call into the center. One of the volunteers for the AARP goes outside, gets their information, brings it in, and the elder can go home so that they're not waiting outside in the cold. And then they're called to come back and get their tax information. So we have our first meeting, our first event was last week for that. We had 16, we did 16 last week, and we'll be doing 16 more tomorrow through every Tuesday through the first week of April. So we're trying to keep up as our services as best, thinking out of the box and trying to keep things going, whether it be transportation, like the income tax today. If anyone drove by, they saw our Tai Chi class, believe it or not, doing their exercises outside. So there's a strong will out there, continuing with the grab and goes twice a month, at least 100 to 110 people each time we have a grab and go. So there's a variety of programs that we are trying to keep going and have been very supported by the community and local restaurants for all of those programs.
Thank you, Ms. Marciello. I'll leave it up to other members of the board for questions, comments. Mr. Bendel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very.
Oh God, I'll never forget that one. There we go.
There's a good ring to it, Jonathan. I don't know.
Denied.
Maybe that's why. Maybe he's going for the president.
In all seriousness, thanks, Terry. I think it was about a week ago we spoke last. I got a call from a resident who was having a difficult time with the online registration. Called you up instantly. You got in contact with the person, and she was able to get vaccinated just a few days later. And I know the family was really appreciative. Just one example of sure dozens, if not more. And so we really appreciate that. I really appreciate you and your staff finding creative ways to help people. Being so constrained, there's only so much you can do. I know you wish you could do more. You're doing a phenomenal job of trying to find creative ways to help our seniors, especially with the online registration. I can't imagine how frustrating that can be. So I really want to thank you and your department.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Terry, I can certainly hear the frustration in your voice, and I certainly don't blame you for that frustration. That's for sure, what's happening. But I do want to commend you and your staff and what you're doing and continuing other programs as well. Mm-hmm. And in addition to assisting with the COVID, you're doing the food program, the meals, and the tax. So it's just I know it's probably new territory for you as it is for everybody, but certainly want to thank you and your staff for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Mr. De Palma?
I just want to compliment you, Terry, on what you do. Being a senior, I can see the frustration in a lot of other seniors' eyes, their voices. As you see on television, you see people standing out in line for hours, and it seems like there's no consideration for seniors at this time. And it becomes very frustrating. I'm fortunate enough that I can travel and I'm healthy enough to get around, but I see what the seniors are going through, and I just think it's just disgusting. And I compliment you on what you and your staff do, and it's a benefit to Wilmington. And I just want to thank you personally.
Thank you.
Someone.
Yeah, so Terry, I kind of want to expand beyond just kind of the vaccine issue, and thank you. We're approaching the 1 year mark of kind of this crazy pandemic, and I know especially our senior demographic has felt very isolated during this time, and it's I think a tribute to you. I hear about it in my other role, kind of on the housing authority, that you've reached out, you're making sure that our seniors are not feeling isolated during this time. You're giving them kind of a touchstone in a time when they might not be able to see family or be able to check in with friends as regularly. And I really appreciate that. I know it's been, super difficult, and we talk about it with Shelley and Chief Kavanaugh every time they come, but I haven't been able to acknowledge it to you yet. That it doesn't go unnoticed that you're making sure our seniors aren't forgotten during this time. And I know, again, speaking as a daughter of a mother who's had to kind of be isolated, and kind of seeing our seniors have to be isolated from their families and friends, the work that you've put in to make sure that you're checking in with them regularly is amazing. And we really do appreciate that you're not letting anyone slip through the cracks through this, and it's really appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Hall?
Again, Terry, and it's just another example of the commitment that Terry and her department have to the seniors. There's a multitude of examples that you can cite, and I referenced some of them when she was before the Finance Committee, just what I often like to describe as going the extra mile, and that's really what has taken place here, but not surprisingly.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Ms. Marciello, keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. I will.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Move now next to our 7:20 appointment, which is with Lou Samaglia, the Director of Veteran Services, regarding the status on veteran services and impact from COVID-19. Mr. Samaglia, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I just want to wake it up here. We're gonna try and pick this up a little bit, okay? I appreciate you inviting me here this evening to discuss the Department of Veteran Services. I'm going to give you a little update of what we've done the past year. Although challenging at times, we're able to offer services and events as we have in the past. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, very well, Mr. Samaglia.
Okay, just checking. We had a Veterans Benefit Night March of last year, right before the shutdown, that was well attended. And among other things, we were able to connect a young veteran with housing that night, and another veteran we connected with the VA for his health care that he wasn't enrolled in before. Also, that was the evening we met with Liam Prigmore, and he met with us to come up with the idea of a monument to honor our fallen warfighters. Although we were unable to have our world-famous Memorial Day parade, we did, however, have our annual Memorial Day ceremonies, decorating the veterans' graves at Wildwood Cemetery and the warfighters' monuments around town. We held a ceremony commemorating an anniversary of 9/11. We have been able to secure food baskets, food and gas cards with the help of Wilmington Sons of Italy and many others. We partnered with the Wilmington High School hockey team to secure items that we've sent overseas to our brave men and women serving. We will again partner with them again this year because they brought in a bunch of items that they received during their last Saturday's hockey game where they wear the camouflage jerseys. We held a wonderful Veterans Day ceremony on the Common where we unveiled the new monument thanks to the hard work of Eagle Scout Liam Prigmore, honoring all who were killed or missing in action from Wilmington. Also, as a part of our Veterans Day weekend, we dedicated a street in honor of Mr. George Veloza, World War II Silver Star recipient. There's that beautiful monument right there, Liam and his mother and father. Amazing young man. Quick story on Liam. We received a call in the office. We have a veteran, older veteran with his wife in town, and they couldn't shovel. So I called Liam, and they went over there twice the last storm, did an amazing job. She said they even cleaned off their grill, and they wouldn't take any money, and they just said they were there to do it. And it was just another example of Liam's love for his community and hard work. And also, as I'm sure you've heard, he was accepted into the Merchant Marine Academy in New York. All these things were made possible by the hard work of Patty Meehan and Mike Fraughton and others. We are busy because it's our job. It's our job to serve all the veterans of Wilmington and their families, and it's a charge we all take very seriously. We are extremely grateful to the taxpayers of Wilmington for allowing us to serve them every day. Unfortunately, there are many consequences due to COVID, and the veterans community is no different than everyone else. We all have learned to overcome and adapt as we were trained in the military. The Bedford VA has done an amazing, there's the hockey kids. Sorry, I might have put that in a little better order there. The Bedford VA hospital has done an amazing job getting the vaccines out. They're actually down to 50 years or older can go to the VA and get their vaccine. You have to be enrolled in the VA healthcare system, make an appointment, you go over there, you get your first shot, and then they set up the appointment to get your second vaccine. What you're looking at there is the portraits of all the young men and women that have died since 9/11 just from Massachusetts. And that's on the wall of our office. And there's the other wall, and those are all the young men and women from Wilmington that have died since 9/11. The two on the top are John Landry and Joshua Bernard. They were killed in action. I'm sure you've heard me say it in the past, veteran suicide is a devastating issue we've been dealing with for many decades. According to many studies, 22 veterans a day commit suicide. And unfortunately, Wilmington has also been affected by this. The veteran suicide numbers have increased 20% since COVID started, 30% for active duty members. There are many reasons veterans struggle to reintegrate from military to civilian life, but to me, our focus should be on how to get these young men and women the help as soon as they get home. We in our Veterans Department have been able to assist many veterans as soon as they discharge from the military and get them the help sooner rather than later, even during this pandemic. Right now, many VA facilities do not offer in-person mental health visits, and to include many groups that a lot of our veterans take advantage of. Phone and Zoom visits, Zoom meetings, they just don't cut it. Another issue we're dealing with is when you open a claim for a service-connected disability, obviously you have to have an exam. They call it a comp and pen exam. And many of these veterans are having to travel many miles, including out of state. And we feel it's not acceptable that our veterans, many of are older, like I said. And last Thursday, the Boston Globe even had a story about this. Another VA issue we're dealing with right now is the closing of the pharmacies in the C-Box. Those are the community-based outpatient clinics. The one in Lowell in particular, many Wilmington veterans use for their health care. And they're closed the clinic, the pharmacy. And you can't go there either for mental health inpatient visits. And we're working with our representatives, state and federal, on those issues. The Mass General program offers it's a phenomenal program. The home-based program with Mass General does so much for returning veterans and their families that it's second to none throughout the country. They offer so many programs to these returning warfighters. And Patty, Mike, and I have taken many courses. We've taken some courses on recognized suicide risk of returning veterans and pain, issues of returning veterans. So Mass General offers these, and we've been taking advantage of them online. We're also in the process of getting representatives from the home base to come to our town and train our first responders to look for the red flags that, unfortunately, many of these young vets are dealing with, and older vets too. So we're trying to get something together with Chief Kavanaugh to have the home base instructors, if you will, come out to Wilmington and go over their programs. So that's kind of a quick overview of what we've done the past year and what we're dealing with. Any veteran that is enrolled in the VA healthcare system, by all means, give our office a call, or you can call 781-687-4000, and that will get you. Keep calling it if it's busy. They're really good about answering it. I don't even think they have a machine on it. And as long as you're enrolled in the VA healthcare system, you can get your vaccine. Other than that, we're here. We've really maybe slowed down a little, but we're still here. We do a lot of good things through this office. We've been busy. But I appreciate you giving me the time to tell you, and I hope I didn't bore you too much.
Mr. Smagly, I'll be the one boring everybody here. That's my role here. I do want to thank you and Mr. Frodden and Ms. Meehan for all of the work that you folks do on a regular basis, and certainly stepping up to this challenge as we all would have expected from you as you have turned your passion to serving the veterans community into a career. And I won't be the first, and I certainly won't be the last to say that you're the best veteran services officer in the entirety of the Commonwealth. So certainly thank you for your outreach and your service to that population, because it is, don't you smirk. I'm here to bore you, Mr. Samaglia.
It's nice, and I appreciate that, but we're a team over here. And weekends, nights, we field calls, and we're a reactionary force in a lot of cases. And it's good to have a good team around here and a lot of help. And we just take advantage of a lot of the good programs that are out there. And I did mention the food baskets that we've been able to do through all this too, food cards and all that. It's been amazing. It's been a lot of help.
Thank you, Mr. Smaglia. We'll open up for board members. Mr. Bendel, I see you raising your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Lou, I want to congratulate you. I think that was the longest I've ever heard you go without your cell phone going off.
It's not right to text during a meeting. You know that.
To say that you're busy is an understatement. Thanks so much for the update. A lot of great things going on. You, Mike, and Patty are the best, like the chair said. Last week, we in school vacation had a chance to stop by your office and say hello. By the way, it's the coolest office in town. No disrespect to anybody else, but every time I go in there, I'm in awe, just looking around. And it didn't last long, the visit. I just went to say hello, but I was there maybe 5 minutes, and 3 or 4 veterans came in, and you guys got right to work. So
socially distance and with mask on.
Absolutely. But, like I said, it was as if nothing had ever changed in the world. You guys are just as busy, providing great service. And I love telling this story because it's a true story. But just a few months ago, I talked to a selectman in a neighboring town, and she told me, and sometimes we bounce ideas off each other, and she told me that, she had heard from a resident, a veteran who had a problem, and she said, I'm going to direct you to do what I always do, call Lou in Wilmington. So your reach goes far beyond the borders of Wilmington. We all know that. You're the best. And I know just in the last 2 weeks or so, 2 veterans that have, made their way to the VA in Bedford to get vaccinated because of your help. And I really appreciate that, you getting the word out there, because I don't think a lot of people knew that. Started off as 60 plus. You telling us tonight it's down to 50.
Yeah.
Great news. And from what I understood, talking to one of the gentlemen afterwards, it was very fast, very easy, very seamless. And again, so thanks so much to you, Mike and Patty, for all you do. Really appreciate you, everything you do for our finest heroes in town.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's one good thing the VA has been doing. Bedford has been really on point over there. They have a tent set up. You pull up, give them your information, roll up your sleeve, in and out.
Thank you. Mr. Kyra.
Yeah. Lou, I'm sure that he must have brought you a hot cup of coffee, or was it an iced coffee? What
Iced
did he do
coffee.
with you? Iced coffee.
coffee.
Okay.
You
Just
can't
checking.
come in here without an iced coffee.
All right, just checking on that. But Lou, you're on top of it. You're on top of everything, and it's the community truly appreciates what you and Patty and Mike are doing, day in and day out on behalf of our veterans and active service individuals as well. But Mr. Bendel said it all, really, and I just want to ditto his comments and thank you for what you do and your staff. Tremendous amount of work that you do, and we cannot thank you enough. And as Chairman Eaton said, you are really the best one in Massachusetts.
I got the trophy to
And
prove.
we're glad that we have you. Thank you.
It's up on the wall.
Mr. De Palma, what do you have to add to someone who clearly has the best Zoom background in the entire?
He does. You got the classiest stuff. I just want to let you know my grandson is over in Norway, and it's.
Give me his address.
Pardon me?
Give me his address. Give me his APO address.
And whose name comes up? Yours. And he just cracked up. He texted me and just said, "Hey, Pops, Lou's known over here. One of the Marines he's with, his cousin was in the Marines and knows you, and they just talking about you. So you're known all over the world. Never mind Massachusetts, pal." Thank you for everything you do for the servicemen of this country.
And thank you for your grandson's service.
So, Mahoney?
Yeah, so Lou, again, you know, not to restate what's already been said, but in this past year that we've been kind of dealing with this pandemic, I've seen kind of in my professional world, the services that have shut down and how telehealth isn't the same as the healthcare that our veterans deserve and people struggling with mental health or addiction issues deserve. So I really appreciate that you've gone above and beyond in a time where it's easy to say, you know, these services just don't exist right now. Sorry. You spend the extra time, you and your team, you, Mike and Patty, spend the time seeking out alternatives to make sure that support still exists for our servicemen and women. And in this time, especially, that doesn't go unnoticed because it is easy to kind of tap out and use the state of affairs to say why things just can't be the way that they were. And you have been seeking out the alternatives for it. And I think, you know, our veterans are lucky, and I know your trophy exists there somewhere, that you're the best in the state, if not more nationally. You know, we really appreciate the fact that you go above and beyond looking for the supports when they're not as easy to find as they were a year or 2 or 5 or 10 ago, because it's not. We are in times right now that it's not the same to just be able to text a therapist or call a therapist. These people we all need extra supports, and the fact that you and Patty and Mike go above and beyond finding those supports is amazing and appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall?
Just to echo everything that's been said, I think, you know, clearly these times are just nothing that any of us have lived through, very unsettling, and to be able to rely upon and go to a team of individuals who are totally committed, as Lou and Patty and Mike are, and offer some measure of reassurance and stability, and truly know what they're doing and get veterans directed to the right resources. I don't think it can be overstated. And I know that in other communities, unfortunately, they don't have the same opportunities that veterans here in Wilmington do. I recently had a letter that was sent to me from a veteran in another community, and he spoke about stopping into the office, and you know, the process that just instantly took place. In this particular case, I think Mike was working with someone else, but as soon as that person was squared away, he immediately spoke with this gentleman and put him right at ease and took care of what he needed to have addressed. And, you know, so often I'm used to getting calls from people that are upset about one thing or another. And for someone to go to the time and effort to write a 2-page letter speaks volumes.
Yeah, if I may, I appreciate that, Jeff. And that gentleman, you know, it's one of many cases where somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I want to get the vaccine. Am I enrolled in the healthcare system? And I have some health issues." Well, I'm also a Vietnam veteran, and I have diabetes, which is a presumptive disease. You know, we can start them the process of getting the health care they need and their disability claim set up that they never knew was there. So that goes back to the Mass General home-based program. That's going to be good. Chief Desmond, I'm going to be reaching out to you and hopefully get these guys out here to give us a little class for the all.
Absolutely. In November, we grow our beards. That's for Project Home Base. It's a great organization.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou, and thank you. It's been a running theme, certainly so far tonight, that the state has limited our ability to respond to certain aspects of this pandemic, but our town departments certainly have gone above and beyond in stepping up to this challenge, and you are certainly a significant part of that. And the same goes to Mr. Frotton and Ms. Meehan as well, and certainly continuing to be a point of pride for this community. So, Mr. Smaglia, thank you for your continued service to this community, and keep it up.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We move now to our 7:30 appointment. We are 30 minutes behind schedule on the dot. We are welcoming our police chief, Joe Desmond, regarding the accreditation of the Wilmington Police Department. So good evening, Chief.
That's a tough act to follow, I'll tell you. It's not easy following Lou, but thank you and good evening. I just want to update you. Very proud of the fact that, well, in the way of background, 2011 was the first year we got fully accredited. It was the goal of Chief Pagonis's to get the department to this level. It is not an easy thing to do. Currently, there are only 94 agencies that have full accreditation. Some have certification, but only 94 reach it to the next level. And once you get to that level, every 3 years, you have to be reassessed. And this past August, we went through an in-person 3-day assessment. Obviously, there were a lot of delays because of COVID, but in the board meeting on January 20th, they voted to assert our accreditation for the next 3 years. So certainly this is something that there's a lot of work that goes into this. It is not the most glamorous part of law enforcement. It has to do with policies and procedures. But the good part about it is an independent organization comes in to evaluate us. It's not us assessing ourselves. And again, it's not easy. We have to make changes. We have to make sure that all the policies and procedures are up to date and they're current. It covers everything from training to the way we handle evidence to policies and procedures on booking prisoners and things like that. And it's not, again, an easy thing to get, but I'm proud of the work that the department has done. And certainly as long as I'm here, I'm going to try and make sure that we keep this up, because as difficult as it is to get it, it's also not easy to keep it. And every 3 years, you have to make sure you're doing what you need to do. And I want to thank Lieutenant Dan Murray, spearheaded this for us this year. He's our manager on this. He had a very busy August, but it certainly paid off. And there's a lot of talk about, law enforcement reform, which is great, but in many ways, we've already been doing that and we continue to do it. And certainly when those regulations come with the new legislation, we'll certainly, be ready to do that. And as far as the town, why this is important, it helps with insurance. It helps with liability issues. If we ever get sued, we can turn to the fact that we follow all these policies and procedures. So it's not just a benefit for us, but we think it's a benefit for the town as well.
Thank you, Chief Desmond. Certainly, it's not lost on any of us that you have prioritized engaging in the community as well, in constructive and meaningful dialogue as well. So on top of all the additional obligations that you folks have taken on just in the accreditation process, you folks have done a good job in listening and communicating effectively, I think, with the community.
Thank you.
So I want to open it up to board members for questions or comments. Mr. De Palma, you are on mute, so.
Congratulations, Chief. Your department deserves it. And again, something else nice for the town of Wilmington.
Thank you. We think so.
All right, who's up next? Mr. Bendel? I'll go you, Mr. Kyra.
Me? You want me to go? Sure. Chief, thank you. Can't be said enough for all the departments in Wilmington, but in particular the police department for what you do for the community, the work that you've achieved. Congratulations on the accreditation. I know you mentioned Chief Pagonis, and I know he worked hard on that as well way back when, and you continue that expertise of service, and the town appreciates that. immensely in what you do to keep us safe day in and day out. And we thank you for everything that your department does. Thank you.
Mr. Bendel, and now I go to Ms. O'Mahony's kitten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, thanks so much. Congratulations on this.
Thank you.
Awesome. A lot of hard work. Hats off to you, your department, and Lieutenant Murray as well. You know, I've said it a number of times. We're really, really lucky here in Wilmington. I can't imagine it's a challenging time to be in law enforcement. And a lot of the things we see on the news nationally, it's not the case here in Wilmington. We're very fortunate to have a department that's very professional and very compassionate. And that's evident with all the things that you do in community outreach, as Mr. Kara mentioned. I think if you've lived here for a while, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't know an officer in your department, maybe even on the first name basis. And if you're just moved to town, I would say to you that it won't be long until you have a positive experience, one of your officers. And so that's a testament to your leadership and your continued leadership from our previous chief. So thanks so much for all you do, and continued success to you.
Thank you.
So Mahoney.
Sorry. Chief, I said this at town meeting. I'll say it as long as I can say it, that you guys set the benchmark that other forces should be working off of. And you referenced police reform. And I think it's again worth noting that you have been ahead of the curve with having your social worker already available, you know, when other forces don't have that yet, and acknowledging kind of the different things that need to happen in police departments beyond just kind of the law enforcement component of it. You have already been doing that. Your force has already been doing that, has already been trained to do that. And we really are kind of the benchmark for what other towns around us should be doing. And to get accredited reflects that. But, you know, I want you to hear, and hopefully the men and women in your force here, that we appreciate and acknowledge the fact that in this time, you're already ahead of the game, and you're already doing the things that the nation is requesting of other law enforcement agencies. And we really do appreciate the fact that you've been so forward thinking that Chief Pagonis was, and you now are, and all that you're doing to keep us ahead of the curve and to make sure you're doing the best for our community in these times. So, you know, we want to make sure you know, and your force knows that we always have your six in this.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall?
I would just note that, as the chief, I think, alluded to earlier, a lot of the work that went into this is not particularly glamorous or high profile, but because a lot of it deals with risk management, essentially. And, you know, whenever you talk about risk management, I think most people's eyes glaze over, but it is having policies and procedures. Not only is keeping the town or helping to keep the town in a place where we're less liable for the acts or omissions, but it also is keeping the officers, giving them a better chance to be safe, and also providing the services that folks have come to expect. So this, again, I would describe as one of those efforts of going the extra mile.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Chief Desmond, thank you for your continued leadership. Your department remains a point of pride for our community. And thank you for your department's leadership and stepping up to the challenge that we've been faced, not just the past year, but for quite some time now. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just, you know, I also like to mention that this doesn't just happen on Adelaide Street. You know, I need the support of the board, the town manager, the finance committee, and ultimately the people of the community. And we get that, and it makes our job a lot easier when we have that. So we appreciate that too.
Keep up the great work, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, we'll move now to our 7:40 appointments, which is the review of annual town meeting warrant articles submitted by petition. Mr. Hall?
Yes, so I will just go through each of these briefly. The first article, we have a number of them here that are requests for purchase of town-owned land. The first one is map 40, parcels 100 and 101 on Morton Street. And this property is off of Parker and Laurel Ave. Essentially, they're small parcels. One of them is 22,613 square feet, and one of the abutters that is seeking that property. The next one is a request to authorize this gentleman to be eligible to serve on the fire department with regard to, in spite of the fact that he's exceeded the age limit for a civil service, which is 35. We get these periodically. The next one is a town-owned land property, map 55 parcels, 228A, which is Lake Street. It's a very small piece of property, about 1,742 square feet. Sits right on Silver Lake. They're seeking to, people across the street, I believe, are seeking to purchase that. We have a request to name the field at the North Intermediate that has been submitted. The next one is rezoning from residential R60 to residential R20, map 3, parcel 15, which is on Andover Street. This parcel is just north of Foster's Pond Road, on the same side, on the right-hand side, if you're heading towards Andover. We have another request to buy a town-owned land. This is on property behind 12 Ohio Street. It's actually on a New Hampshire road, map 35, parcel 45, a little over 6,000 square feet. Again, I believe a neighbor is, or one of the people in that area is looking to purchase it. Again, recognizing that all of these town-owned parcels, if they're deemed, first of all, they go to the Property Review Committee, which is made up of a number of department heads, and they look at whether the property, in their opinion, is deemed surplus. It comes to me, and then I'll make a determination as to whether I believe the property is surplus to the town's needs. And if it is, it goes to town meeting, and the assessor establishes a baseline amount, which is the floor, so to speak, for receiving bids on the property. Next is a town-owned land purchase, map 6, parcels 149 and 150. This is on Stanley Street, which is off of Burlington Ave. One of the parcels, 149, is 4,356 square feet. 150 is about 2,178 square feet. Town-owned land, 858 Woburn Street. This is right at the corner of Industrial Way. This property is 13,068, approximately 13,068 square feet. We have a request to rezone from general business to neighborhood mixed use. A couple of parcels, map 40, parcels 11 and 13. These are both on Cross Street, across from the Yentile Park. And in these cases, one of the parcels, parcel 11, is 2.66 acres. Parcel 13 is about 21,244 square feet. Just noting that it looks like from the RGIS maps that a good portion of parcel 11 is wet, and some of 13, but apparently there's interest in potential development there. The next one is town-owned land, map 9, parcel 56, Aldrich Road. And this parcel is about 16,177, I'm sorry, 16,117 square feet, just beyond Buckingham Street, same side, if you're heading towards Billerica. Next, we have a rezoning from residential R60 to highway industrial map R1 parcel 2A, map R2 parcels 19A and map 103 parcels 24 and 24A. And then also rezoning from general industrial to highway industrial map R1 parcel 1A. These parcels are all on 125 right at the 93 off ramp at 125, right in that neck of the woods. And then we have property proposed to be donated to the town to acquire by gift, map R1 parcel 1. This again is on Route 125. It's approximately a little over 13 acres. We have request to amend the zoning bylaws. Section 3.5.8 of the table of principal uses, use regulations. This all deals with funeral homes. The next one is rezoning from residential R10 to neighborhood mixed use. Map 66, parcel 15, 168 Middlesex Street, which is just about across from Abundant Life. And then this final request is to amend the zoning bylaw, section 3.5.19 of the table of principal uses, use regulations, and this has to do with pet care facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Is there any questions or comments from members of the board? I know Mr. Hall will get to it when we get to important dates, but there will be a Finance Committee Planning Board joint public hearing relative to the entire warrant for the annual town meeting at 7 o'clock on March 16th, so that petitioners certainly have the opportunity to explain what they're trying to do and perhaps why. Members of the public have the opportunity to weigh in, and certainly the Planning Board and the Finance Committee as well. So any comments or questions from the board before we move on to the next appointment? All right, seeing none, we will now move to our 750, which is the preliminary discussion on the annual town meeting non-petition warrant articles. Mr. Hall.
All right, again, just going through these very quickly. These first several you'll be very familiar with. Article 1 is the election. Article 2, submission of reports. I don't anticipate any reports on this agenda. Article 3 is to transfer, borrow any sum of money for the purpose of unpaid bills. I believe from what Brian Perry has indicated, there may be a couple on that. We tend to run into this with bills associated with health insurance, but I don't anticipate that there's anything significant. We had a couple last year, if I recall. Article 4 is the borrowing article. You'll recall it comes up every year. Article 5 is the budget article, all the line items and departments. Article 6 are the various beginning of the capital projects, and this one is various pieces of equipment. First being the purchase of 2 replacement cruisers. The expected sum there is $100,000. Next is fire department, the purchase of a reserve pumper at a cost of $150,000. The expectation there is to use free cash for that. Then under DPW, we have the purchase of 1 heavy-duty wheeled excavator to be assigned to the highway division. Estimated cost $235,000, expecting to use free cash. Purchase of 1 heavy-duty 1-ton dump body truck with plow, again assigned to highway, cost $85,000. Purchase of 1 sidewalk plow, again assigned to highway, expected cost $175,000. We'll be looking to use free cash. Purchase of 1 asphalt hot box trailer, again, assigned to the highway, $42,000. Then under the school department, the purchase of a replacement handicapped accessible wheelchair minivan, $42,000. Article 7 is to seek to purchase 8 new voting machines. It's a request that came from the clerk's office. The cost is $35,000. The total cost is actually a bit more than that. It's about $45,000, but we have an elections account that we'll be using to defray some of the costs associated with that. Article 8 is the first IT article, and this is to replace our phone system with a voice over IP system at a cost of $70,000. Next is another IT article to purchase the services associated with replacing servers at the town hall and the public safety building. And this is a estimated cost of $35,000. We're Article 10, also an IT item requesting the purchase of 4 mobile computers. These actually are outfitted in the police cruisers, cost estimate $30,000. Article 11 is a continuation of the work being done at the dispatch center. You'll recall last year we talked about this last year being the first of a 3-phase project to upgrade all aspects of the dispatch and antennas and communication system. Cost is $450,000 with the expectation to use free cash. Next is replacing fire alarm, radio alarm receivers and fire station alerting system at a cost of $55,000. Article 13 is to begin the first phase of roof replacement at the Shawsheen Elementary School of design work associated with that, 24,000 square feet of roofing. $85,000 is the expected cost for that. Article 14 is to replace the ceiling tiles at the Woburn Street School. The estimated cost here is $527,000, and the expectation is to use free cash. Article 15 is to address the loan that we have had now for some period of time. We're in our 6th year with Russell Disposal. You'll recall when the town contracted with them, we financed the purchase of the barrels, recycling and trash barrels over the life of the contract, which at the time was expected to be 10 years. The cost to pay this off is $365,000, and we're looking to use free cash. Article 16 is to replace what's called a robotic total station survey equipment. This is used for the engineering department when they're out in the field doing survey work. The estimated cost is $25,500. Next is to look at engineering services for the intersection at Shawsheen Ave, Hopkins Street, and Lake Street. This will be the first phase, and ultimately reconfiguring or replacing the signals there. The cost here is $25,000 for the engineering services. Next, Article 18, the installation of traffic signal detection at Salem Street, Route 62, and Woburn Street. This is $20,000 is the estimated cost. Article 19, to see if the town will raise and appropriate money for reconstructing the tennis and basketball courts at the Shawsheen School. The cost is $350,000, and we're looking to use free cash. Article 20 is to engage engineering services to evaluate the Frank Kelly track with the expectation that in the subsequent year we would look to replace, reconstruct the track. The cost on this for engineering services is $40,000. Article 21 is, this is an ongoing item essentially for costs associated with upgrades to the cemetery, Wildwood Cemetery, estimated cost $15,000. Article 22, this is again another ongoing cost that I would expect we'll see for some period of time to comply with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems permitting and maintain our stormwater discharge permit. The cost here is $50,000. Article 23, this is a relatively new one. This first came in last year after the town authorized the establishment of an enterprise fund for the sewer side of the DPW. So the budget there, again, what happens here is that the cost or the revenue that's generated from the sewer ratepayers goes into this fund, and then in turn, the costs associated with operating the sewer system, everything from the MWRA assessment to personnel and other associated costs are paid out of that enterprise fund. The total is $3,523,464. Article 25, this is a capital item, again, from the sewer account. This is to take an existing underground control panel and place it above ground. $40,000 is the estimated cost there. Article 25 is to replace a pump at the Shawshene Commons. There's actually, this is one of two pumps, needs to be replaced at a cost of $25,000. Article 26, this is money that is received from the state as our portion of monies collected from Uber and Lyft. The amount is used to cover crack sealing of streets and those kinds of road maintenance items. The estimated number here is $7,929.70. Article 27, we're getting into these school items here. This is for to replace switches, computer switches within the schools. The cost is $90,000. Article 28 is to replace PCs in the high school labs at a cost of $68,000. Article 29 is to replace and upgrade the security servers in the Wilmington Public Schools. The cost is $30,000. And then Article 30 is for the replacement of projectors in the elementary schools. This is actually the first of a two-year effort. $100,000 is proposed for this year. Article 31 is an article that would allow the town to purchase or acquire by various means the property, the portion of the property at 201 Lowell Street, which is the tennis courts and the ball fields there, right on actually adjoining the Yentile Farm Recreation Facility. Article 32 is again to put money in the OPEB fund. Once again, we're proposing $1 million go into this account, as we have done now for the last several years. Article 23, we're looking to put $1 million into the capital stabilization account. Article 34, this is again prepayment on the Middlesex, on our Middlesex retirement liability. We're looking to put in $1.5 million into that account. Article 35 would be the transfer article, and we'll, as we get closer to the date here, we'll have some specifics as to what transfers may be required. This is instances where general government budgets, particular line items, we're anticipating that the expenditures are going to exceed the amounts that were authorized. And so, as you know, typically we'll first try to identify either line items within that particular department that can be used to offset, or we'll look at other departments that may have available funds that can be transferred to cover these costs. Article 36, this is the request that has been happening now for several years, with the exception of last year, to assist with the funding of the July 4th celebration. $50,000 is once again proposed. It's still unclear as to whether the event will happen. I know in checking in with Pat Giroux, they're going to be making a decision within the next month and a couple of months, is my understanding, but at least to have that option available in the event that hopefully the July 4th festivities continue in some manner. Article 37 is for funds to support the Memorial Day and Veterans Day services. $8,000 is the appropriation request. Article 38, it specifies the amounts here for the Veterans of Foreign Wars Clubhouse and the American Legion, $750 for each group. Article 39 is once again to fund the PEG access account. So this has been going on now for a few years. The Department of Revenue determined a few years ago that the money that comes, that is generated from subscribers to Verizon and Comcast for viewing, to having cable services, that those funds have to be deposited with the municipality. They're actually town funds subject to appropriation. So for the last 2 or 3 years now, we've been setting an amount, and it's really based upon what the amount is that's coming in from the collection of cable receipts. So we're estimating at the moment that the amount there will be approximately $513,000. And again, these are funds that come from Verizon and Comcast to the town and then get dispersed to WCTV. Article 40, this has been a long-standing article. Essentially, we have these revolving accounts for the compost bin program and the septic disposal program, and the amounts are listed there. $4,500 is requested for compost bin fund, and $200,000 for the subsurface sewage disposal upgrade fund. Article 41, which I know oftentimes creates a lot of conversation. Essentially, it's a placeholder, if you will. This is for the public rink. If there was ever a time that the town were to acquire the Christutia rink, this would authorize the town to expend through a enterprise fund up to $526,000. That's the number that we've been using now for several years. Article
figure again, Mr. Howell.
526,000.
Thank you.
Article 42 is a request that came from the library trustees to name the office space on the first floor, the Barbara Johnson room. not much more to describe on that one. Article 43, and I put this in, certainly this is a point of discussion if the board wishes to keep this in here or not, but it's a so-called Mullen rule, which some of you may be familiar with, but essentially the provision of law, as it's noted here, Chapter 39, Section 23D, allows for various permitting boards, such as the Board of Appeals, a planning board. If a committee member was present during the course of a hearing before that board, and oftentimes, as you know, these meetings will sometimes go through 3 or 4 sessions on the same matter. And if a member was not able to be present at one of those meetings, but was able to document prior to the decision being made that they had seen the tape or the audio of that meeting that they missed, they would still be able to vote on that matter. So I think it provides some measure of help both for the board or committee, and it also provides some benefit to the applicant, because oftentimes if there's a supermajority that's required in a Board of Appeals example, if they have a variance or a special permit required and they need more than the simple majority, it's beneficial to them as well. So again, it's subject to the board's thoughts on that one. Article 44 is really a correction. If you recall, last year there was an article submitted by petition that addressed the traveling animal shows, and there was a misprint, or the proponent didn't accurately reference the article. So it's really a housekeeping article in this case to make that correction. Article 45, these are the beginning of some zoning articles. And this one and the next one, I believe, are really in some measure born out of some discussions that have taken place with the Economic Development Committee. And even prior to that, you'll recall we had the UMass study that was done on Main Street. So this is to provide greater ability for proponents who are looking to open up a pub style restaurant where the proponents would be able to, the primary purpose would still be a restaurant. They would perhaps be able to create their own beer and sell up to 25% of it off premises. In this article, rather than being by a special permit, would be by right. So it would still be governed by or reviewed by the board, the planning board, go through site plan review and the various reviews that they require, but it would reduce the threshold and make it a little bit easier, if you will. Article 46 is similar to that. Let me just look at my notes on that one. So that one is also dealing with restaurants and allowing for this particular use that we had talked about with the ability to create some greater diversity, really, in terms of the types of restaurants that might want to come to Wilmington. Article 47, this is changing the special permit granting authority from the Zoning Board of Appeals to the Planning Board in this particular case. And then Article 48, there's some property that is proposed to be rezoned from residential 20 to residential 10. In this particular case, Valerie had a conversation, I guess a resident in this had approached Valerie about some of these parcels in their neighborhood. I think they were having difficulty getting a pool permit because of the zoning, and most of the property is in the 10,000 or 12,000 square foot lots. Really doesn't any longer mirror what residential 20 is, which is 20,000 square feet. So I think the intent was to try to rezone these, or is to rezone these to more appropriately fit the what is on the ground, so to speak. And then the various, the next one's 49 and beyond are the petition articles.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hull. If you could just, I missed Article 16's dollar figure. If you could just restate that, please.
Sure, Article 16. Article 16 is $25,500.
Thanks, Mr. Hull. Any other questions or comments from board members?
Mr. Hull, through you, Mr. Chair, on that last one you mentioned, could you just, for the residents, I believe that's off of Aldridge Road, you have the street for the rezone, proposed rezone?
Yes, it's, so that's Mozart Avenue.
Which is off Aldridge, thank you.
Yes, yep.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Hall, I'll give you a reprieve on the first communication. First item under communications is a letter from me to our congressional delegation, Senators Warren and Markey and Representative Seth Moulton. We discussed it at least tangentially earlier in our appointment with Ms. Newhouse, but it was sent on Tuesday of last week, which is important because the subsequent item under communications was received on Wednesday, but it was an appeal to our federal delegation to get involved to the extent that they might be able to expedite the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines to the Commonwealth, and to be clear about the communication that the federal government was giving to the state government as to exactly the doses that were to be delivered to the Commonwealth. The next item under communication was essentially the state's rejection of that appeal, not directly or specifically to the town of Wilmington, but the state's favored position of general mass vaccination sites to be administering vaccines as opposed to local boards of health. So, Mr. Hall, I'll hand it back off to you.
Right. So that, as Shelley pointed out in her piece earlier, she put up on the screen the requirements there that the state is now setting out for these regional operations, regional collaboratives, a minimum of 750 vaccines per day that have to be administered, have to be open 5 days a week, and have an administrative threshold of 85% of the vaccines, and then be able to report the doses administered within 24 hours. So those are some of the standards that were referenced here in this most recent correspondence. So next, under correspondence, we have an email, and I'll defer to Selectman O'Mahony to speak to this one on MBTA.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Hull. There were some questions, there was some press in January, towards the end of January, about the MBTA getting a grant for improvements to the North Wilmington station. And the question or the concern was, did that change kind of the plan that had been presented to us previously with regards to the North Wilmington station, making it handicapped accessible, making it so the platform would extend so that the trains wouldn't be stopping in the middle of the intersection and therefore blocking emergency personnel if they needed to pass. And my understanding is that this funding is a supplement to the original plan and not a replacement of it. I don't believe it alters the plan that had been previously presented to us by Senator Tarr and Representative Robertson, I think over a year ago. But I am awaiting confirmation of that. I believe Senator Tarr's office has responded that that's also their understanding. And the only other kind of MBTA advisory board update that I thought was worth sharing with you is that there is discussions right now about the MBTA advisory board actually being able to appoint someone to the MBTA governing board, which would be new and different. And then the service cuts and changes that I had addressed previously are also still receiving public comment. They are being implemented. And again, they don't really impact Wilmington other than kind of the schedule changes that I had referred to previously. But if you go to the MBTA website, you can see the press from January, as well as look up the schedule to make sure you understand what the service impacts are. They're really just not running trains later into the evening and on the weekends. That's all I have.
So just to perhaps dovetail on that, I have had a few email exchanges with Senator Tarr's office requesting perhaps a visit, at least via Zoom, with representatives from the MBTA to provide us with an update on what is planned in North Wilmington. As you recall, the original plan, they had cobbled together some state money to provide a platform. And it would seem to me with this additional money that presents some opportunities to perhaps provide a more upscale, if you will, facility or accommodating facility. So I'd just like to understand what it is that what they're going to be able to do with that additional $1 million. So we're hoping to get some response to that. Next under correspondence is a email alert from the Mass Department of Transportation. This is with regard to the situation that we had on 93 at the 125 bridge. This was as I understand it, a flatbed truck that was apparently transported some kind of a recycling or disposal compartment, had offloaded that and not put the bed down. And as a result, at the north side of the bridge at 125, and the alert from Daniel Fielding is just noting that the temporary overnight closure took effect on the two right lanes from at exit 41, and that the incident took place on the 10th, and he references it as an overheight trash hauling truck striking the north fascia beam. These are some of the pictures that I think Paul Looney took. And then the next item under correspondence is related. Paul contacted our engineering firm, Green International, that had been responsible for the design of the water line that actually, if you look at this picture, the water line is attached on the opposite side, the southbound side of the bridge. And we wanted to be sure that that there was no damage or potential weakness as a result of this collision. And there was an initial observation. Paul was out there with the representative from Green to do a kind of an initial visual from the road, if you will. And then later the next day, they went out at about 11:30 in the evening and went up in a bucket truck and were able to take a closer look. It appears that there is no damage to the water main as a result of that, that accident. Next is a memo from me to Christina Tuma-Conway, Town Clerk. This is a follow-up to the board's special meeting that took place last Wednesday, and I'm just advising her that the board, in fact, did vote to authorize the placement of the unexpired 2-year term for the school committee seat that was previously occupied by Steve Bjork, authorize that to be placed upon the upcoming election ballot for April 24th, and also advised her that the board decided to take no action with respect to having a joint meeting of the school committee to establish a temporary fill on that position until the 24th. Next is correspondence from the town clerk to the individuals. There were 4 individuals, as I understand it, that prior to the board's discussions had expressed interest in this seat, or in possibly serving in a temporary manner. So Ms. Conway emailed the individuals just conveying essentially the information that I just highlighted with respect to the board's actions, that the seat will be placed on the ballot for April 24th. And she also just notes the requirements for individuals interested in the 2-year seat, that the nomination papers need to be turned in by March 5th. I would also add to that at March 5th at 5 p.m. is the deadline. Individuals need to have nomination papers with at least 50 certified signatures, meaning that they're registered voters. And that went out to, I believe, 4 residents. Next is notice of appointment. This is by the appointing committee, which, as you know, is comprised of the chair of the Board of Selectmen, chair of the Finance Committee, and the moderator, to a vacancy on the Finance Committee. This was the seat that was held by Hirak Shah. Mr. Andrew Levine was appointed to that position. Next is just an FYI. I've made a recent appointment to a vacancy on the Elderly Services Commission. Kenneth Clarkin has been appointed to that vacancy. Next is correspondence from the State Department of Public Health. This is with regard to an earmark of funding in the fiscal 2021 budget for funds associated with COVID expenses. The town is slated to receive $14,705.88 as part of assisting the town in covering COVID costs. This will be run through the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I would note we have received funds in the past, over the past almost year, totaling $37,714 between funds coming through MAPC, and then you'll recall we had $5,000 from the Lowell 5, so it's certainly helpful and appreciated. Next is a memo from Glenn Brand and myself with regard to a recent conversation that he and I had with representatives from the MSBA, Mass School Building Authority, and then it was a follow-up with Chairwoman Jen Bryson and Chairman Jonathan Eaton. Essentially, the conversation was to talk about Wilmington's standing with respect to its statements of interest. And as indicated here, I think the message we receive from MSBA is that based upon what they have seen with regard to the buildings and the age of the buildings, the 6 elementary schools, they believe that the town has a strong case. They do have, I think, some measure of, I don't know whether it's concern or certainly would like to have some indication that there is a measure of consensus amongst the local leaders and to the degree that's possible, residents about what the town is looking to evaluate and perhaps not evaluate when it comes to looking at grade configuration or consolidation. So part of this memo is really intended to identify some action steps, if you will, to try to provide some supplemental information to MSBA. The staff folks that we spoke with indicated that they will be making their recommendations to the MSBA Board of Directors by the beginning of April. And then ultimately the Board of Directors will decide on, depending upon the size and scope of the other projects. Typically they award funding to somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 11 districts across the state. So the steps that are proposed at this point would be a presentation with the Finance Committee on March 4th, the Board of Selectmen on the 8th, the School Committee on the 10th, revisiting to some measure the proposal that came out of the facilities plan that talked about grade consolidation there, and also looking for input from each of the respective committees about either that proposal or things that approaches, options that board members, committee members would like to see evaluated or perhaps not want to see considered, whether it's, with some of the things we've talked about, class or school size, for example, is there, what's the comfort level with having school sizes above 500 or 600 students? Some of those things we're trying to get a sense of from the Board of Selectmen, the School Committee, the Finance Committee, and there'll be also a survey that Glenn is going to put together. It's obviously going to be a very limited turnaround because we need to get the results to the MSBA by the end of the month, but the effort is to try to provide them with an indication that there is some measure of consensus around what the community wants to see or perhaps does not want to see. Next is a memo with regard to discussions that I was involved in, and along with Valerie Gingrich and Shelley Newhouse with EPA and DEP with respect to Sutton Brook Superfund site. This is a site that is right on the Tewksbury-Wilmington border. The majority of the site is actually in Tewksbury. A portion of it is in Wilmington. It's the Crockmall Farm area. I think the only way you can access the area, Crockmall, is down South Street in Tewksbury. But this site is a Superfund site. EPA has been working on it for quite some time. They have a record of decision, so they're a little bit ahead of the Olin situation. So they've determined their approach to remediating the conditions there. But one of the issues that they're looking to work with the town of Tewksbury and Wilmington on is establishing these approaches to limit the type of activity that can take place, institutional conditions, so to speak, that to try to limit the types of activity that can occur within the Superfund site itself, and then within a boundary that slightly exceeds that area. One of the things they're particularly concerned about is property owners drilling wells in this area, given that the groundwater is contaminated. And so the conversation was basically finding out whether the town would be willing to put forward an article at town meeting as one possibility. The other possibility they talked about was using the Board of Health regulations to try to limit the types of activities that can happen on property within this area, and also to require that as part of any permitting process that EPA and DEP have an opportunity to review the plans and be able to comment on any proposed uses within these areas. Tewksbury apparently already has is proposing a modification to their zoning bylaw for their town meeting that's, as I understand it, coming up in May. This is really the first that we have had a discussion about this, and I indicated to Lynn Jennings that I didn't believe we were in a position to have an article prepared between now and March 8th for consideration, but we can certainly discuss whether perhaps as a start using the Board of Health regulations and perhaps going forward looking at some kind of a zoning article to assist in this effort. Along and the short of it is we want to make sure that people that owning and using that property are not, that they're protected and not putting in wells that are going to create some issues. The next is a memo to the board with respect to status on use of school buildings for the recreation department. So essentially since March of last year, once COVID hit, the recreation department has not been permitted to use the schools, as has been the practice in years past, for either sporting programs or arts and crafts or any number of programs for students. And as of now, we've been informed by the superintendent that the plan is to not allow use of the schools for the balance of the academic year. In talking to Karen Campbell, obviously in many cases, in all cases, quite frankly, there's a fair amount of lead time that needs to take place to schedule these programs. We're at this point expecting that we will not be able to use the schools at least through the end of the middle of June. And the hope is that if the numbers continue to trend as they have been with COVID and the vaccines kick into gear, that this can be revisited within the next couple of weeks. I know Karen plans to have a conversation with the superintendent, and with the expectation that for the summer programs, we would be able to have access to the schools. So that's where we are at the moment on that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bendel?
Thank you. If I could chime in on this one, please.
Go ahead.
Mr. Hull, thank you very much. I did ask for this update last week. I appreciate you getting this information for us. And the reason I asked for that was after watching a recent finance committee meeting where this was mentioned that was made not to be able to use the schools. So I respectfully want to disagree with the decision. And if I could just read from the memo you gave us, third line of the first paragraph reads that Dr. Brand is concerned about whether the custodial personnel will have the ability to fully clean and disinfect the schools. Well, I have zero concern on whether or not George Hooper and Public Buildings can disinfect and clean schools. I think that they have done a phenomenal job since last March, proving just that, taking care of our schools, our town building, and a very busy public safety building. So I have the utmost confidence in that crew that they're able to do that. I also want to note that, you know, the students, in addition to missing out on being in school, are set to miss out on pickleball, yoga, cooking lessons, pottery, sports 101, kinder soccer, and potentially, as we get closer to the summer, tiny tots and playground. Those are programs that I think are very, very important in keeping our young people active. I'm a graduate of some of those programs as a kid growing up, as many of you are as well. I find this very concerning given the fact that we saw a report from our health director tonight, which he indicates that numbers continue to decline. Vaccinations are being delivered, although not fast enough and close enough to home than we would all like. And that it's my understanding from watching the finance committee meeting with the rec department that the health director would have no problem with our young people taking advantage of these recreational programs. By the way, fine recreational programs put on by Karen Campbell and her staff. So it's just my humble opinion that the kids have missed out on enough. They belong back in the classroom and they should be able to take advantage of these recreational opportunities. So I wanted to state that, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carey, just briefly, I just want to provide some context, and I promise I'll let you go first, just so that anyone watching is clear. So the town manager has jurisdiction over the rental and use of all town property except for schools, which is subject to the school committee. So that is Mr. Bendel's concern, and please, Mr. Bendel, correct me if I'm misstating it, but it is because a town department's been restricted or limited by the superintendent of schools to be using school buildings for a use that has ordinarily been granted without issue. So is that I guess, consistent with your statement?
If I could just clarify, thank you. The memo reads that Dr. Brand is concerned about whether the custodial staff can clean and disinfect. And I wanted to state that I have no concern over whether our public buildings can do that or not, especially where the majority of these programs are offered on the weekend.
Could I just add something, Mr. Chair?
Please. Yep.
From what I understand, what Mr. Hull mentioned, that our Recreation Director, Karen Campbell, is going to have a meeting with Dr. Brand. I might suggest that Judge Hooper be involved in that meeting so he can address the issue as to whether he can get the schools cleaned to allow our youngsters to participate in these recreational activities. And maybe he should be pulled into that meeting as well so he can assure Mr. Brand that his staff is capable of cleaning and turning around the building to protect the youngsters in Wilmington. You know, he'll be able to say yes or no, I would imagine.
I don't know that it's a meeting. I think they were just going to have a conversation. I know that Karen had reached out to Dr. Brand at some point here in the last several weeks, maybe longer, about the prospect of spring programs. And so the expectation was she was going to put a call into him again, but certainly, you know, George can speak to the ability of cleaning the schools. And I agree that his staff has stepped up and kept the schools cleaned. I think they're, you know, that they're doing the job that they've been hired to do in terms of the custodians. So, you know, I can't speak to, you know, all the specifics as to why the superintendent has made the call. I'm presuming he's taking a cautious approach.
And you know, and I appreciate that, but I just, again, want to emphasize the fact that maybe George and Karen can have a Zoom meeting with the superintendent and yourself as well, Mr. Hull, as the town manager, to go over his concerns, and maybe that will help to alleviate any problems, and maybe we can get the kids back into the recreation mode.
Right, okay.
Mr. De Palma?
It's very simple. Get them all together and have a meeting. To make a decision on your own, or with lack of discussion from Mr. Hooper, who has kept our schools clean and protected, is useless. I would just call for a meeting and let them work it out.
Thank you, Mr. De Palma.
All right, so next on the agenda is an update on the status of the football situation. This has been fluid, so to speak. There were some discussions, I think they started maybe a week or two ago. Initially, I had gotten some calls from a couple of parents expressing concern about the inability for their football sons to play football, and we were able to, at the time, make arrangements to have the DPW clear the softball field, at least for practices. So the understanding is that there's going to be 6 games. Again, this is what I'm being told. First 3 being away, the next 3 being actually 2 definitely, perhaps a 3rd game at home, but they needed practice time. So we were looking at the softball field. Clearly, the preference is to not remove snow from the turf fields, but as crew was out there last week making an effort to remove the snow, and given the conditions, a bit warmer weather, some rain, it was clear that the prospect existed that we were going to create more damage to the softball field than was advisable. So that operation was shut down. When I sent the memo out to the board at the end of the week, the expectation at that point was that we might get some colder weather and that the ground there would firm up and that perhaps we could finish the work. That clearly hasn't been the case, and it's expected that warmer conditions are going to remain here for a stretch. So then we had some discussions, we being myself, talked to Mia Mazio, the athletic director. Glenn Brand was also involved in some of the email exchanges, and the request was to use the turf field and the high school field. I'm really looking, I'm concerned about using either field, turf field, obviously, because you're trying to avoid any damage to the fields clearly. But if we're going to use a field, in my estimation, the preferred approach would be to use the Yentile field, because one of the elements of that field that doesn't exist on the high school field is this additional padding that was by design installed there. And so from what I'm gathering, the prospect of damage is less likely to happen with this particular padding at the Yentile field. So at this point in time, the plan is, and again, if we get enough rain here in the next few days, it may become a moot issue, but the plan would be to have the field at Yentile cleared before the end of the week, the snow pushed off of the football field. And there's a firm that has done this for a number of other colleges. Brandeis was one, Wentworth Academy, Stoughton High School. We did get some references. Mike Wood said one of his folks called them, and it appears that they're a reputable firm. Merrimack College, apparently one of the gentlemen that was that Joe Labeo spoke with indicated that they'd used them at Merrimack as well, and that they have not had any issues with them. So That is the plan at this point in an effort to allow the high school football team to engage in practices before their first game.
Mr. Chairman,
Bendel?
I could just add to that too. Maybe just for general public's knowledge, it is important. The MIAA, in conjunction with the MSSA, has decided that cheerleading will only be allowed at home games. So it's equally as important that we have games at home so that our cheerleading squad can participate as well. I just wanted to make that noted.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel.
Mr. Chair, just a question. When do they start practicing football? Because if it's going to get in the high 40s and it's going to rain this week, would the expectation be that the high school field will be ready rather than the Yentile field? Because of just the timing wise, as Mr. Hull said, that there's that possibility that that may happen. So when do they start competing, I guess?
Well, the expectation was for them to start their practices this week. I believe it was, I think it might have been as early as today, but then that obviously has been pushed back. So I think as soon as a field is ready, they would be prepared to be out on the field. But certainly if, if the field at the high school is cleared just by natural cause, then that would make the most sense for them to be playing there.
Yeah, and I know that I expressed my concerns to Mr. Hull about this earlier. My concern being if we were concerned about a tear or a rip in the high school turf, should we be concerned about a tear or rip in the Yentile, considering it's $1 million field? And my understanding is that there's an extra padding, but if you could just reassure the community that we are insured in case there's a mishap over there with the cleaning, and how much is the cleaning going to cost, and where is that money coming from?
So the estimate that was provided to me by the athletic director is the cost is going to be $5,500, and it was going to be coming from the athletic department. They're going to be taking care of the bill. We've requested that the provider of the services provide a certificate of insurance naming the town as an additional insured, so that if there is any damage, we would be looking for the insurance, looking for the vendor to pay for the costs associated with any damage to the field.
And one last thing that I'm concerned with, and we had talked about before, Mr. Hull, is that the clearing over at the high school field has these little pellets
Right.
that make it softer for landing. It's a turf field's a turf field, and it hurts whether you have pellets in there or not. And I understand that, in the past, I think one Thanksgiving we had someone go out and try to clear it off, and a lot of those pellets were removed from that area. And I don't know if we backfilled the pellets back in after that particular season. And one of the concerns, I think, from DPW with how the pellets were flying off, and there's some wet area over there at the high school, and it could go on the track. Now we have the same type of pellets, I believe, at Yentile, and we have a lot of wetlands alongside of that. So I'm assuming that they're going to be brushing away towards the stands rather than towards the wetlands area. I mean, I don't want to dig deep into details. It's not, I'm not an expert at it, but I'm concerned that, environmentally, that we don't mess something up over there. And then secondly, are those pellets going to be replenished, in the springtime because they're going to be moved once they start, brushing that field off. So
Right, I
I
think,
want to make sure we get that field replenished for the kids to follow in the spring with soccer and lacrosse and so forth.
right, that the crumb rubber, which is the material you're talking about, it's all the material that's interspersed in the green rug, if you will. Clearly, the expectation is, and Mike and Jamie DPW are going to be on this in terms of dealing with the contractor, but clearly the expectation is that to the extent that there is crumb rubber disturbed, that it's not going to be pushed into the Maple Meadow Brook area. It's going to have to be either pushed to the end zones or pushed to the other side. And I would expect, as was the case previously before the Thanksgiving Day game, that there will be some crumb rubber that ultimately gets pushed off the field, and that'll have to be assessed after the work is done. And I'm sure we'll be touching base with the outfit that we have that does that put the field in to determine how much more material needs to be brought back in to replace it. I don't offhand know what the specs are, but I would imagine and certainly would believe that there's a certain amount of depth to this crumb rubber that needs to be maintained on the field.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. DePalma?
Question I have is, was the people who are going to be cleaning off the field, were they, did they look at both fields and recommend? Or is this just what has been decided through our town departments to use?
No, this is, they have not looked at the field or both fields. Ultimately, I indicated that in conversation with Mike Woods, that if we were going to have to use a turf field, which, ideally I would prefer not to, but there seem to be certainly a number of communities around that have done this. If we were going to clear one, that we should be clearing the Yentile. One of the things I'll just note in the information that we have about this field is that it has what's called a Brock pad underneath it, which has a 16-year warranty, expires in fall of 2032. So apparently this particular pad, it was not as part of the design of the high school field, so it provides some greater measure of protection. So that was my basis for using the Yentile. But the outfit that is proposed to do this is just going to get their, there's an outfit called Turf Prep. They've apparently worked at St. John's Prep. Some of the comments we get there, Turf Prep is coming back once again this week. Never had any negative issues. Wentworth Institute of Technology, their athletic facilities manager says very high recommendation. Has used them for the past 4 or 5 years, proper equipment, responsible. Athletic director at Stoughton High School used Turf Prep for the first time last week, was impressed with Paul and the work that was completed, great equipment. And then the senior director from Brandeis has never plowed the fields prior to this year, plowed twice so far this year, got students, to get students out with regard to COVID. Good experience so far, no damage to the field. So, it seems like from what we're hearing, they know what they're doing.
Well, it sounds that way. It just seems like every time we're looking for any type of open space and the high school field is brought up, it's, oh no, it's like a precious jewel. Being a high school football team, you'd think they'd want to play on their own football field. And if it's not going to be an issue of, if there's a chance for both of them to possibly have some damage. I don't know why they're just not using the field. That's what it was made for, to play football on. And
Right, it wasn't made to play football in March with snow, though.
then we made a mistake. Simple as that. I have nothing else to say.
Mr. Bendel.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry to keep hopping on this one, but obviously it's a hot button issue, no question about it. More calls about this in the last couple of weeks than almost anything. So, Mr. Hull, I know we talked like almost 2 weeks ago. I just want to, reassure people at home the town has been on top of this. I know you and I spoke maybe 2 weeks ago about this. It's certainly not a DPW issue. Those guys stand ready to take action and help wherever and whenever they can. But I learned a lot from talking to you and DPW that the things I never would have thought of. Number one, the high school turf field is still under warranty until this fall. Is that correct?
Right, yes.
The second one is that we still have soil testing going on behind the high school, and that large amounts of snow piled up back there for months at a time, weeks at a time, could affect that soil testing. So, those are things that I didn't even think of. But, I want to commend our DPW because they're all over that kind of stuff. They're thinking about things that, your average Joe like me who's just excited for football it wasn't thinking about. So I really appreciate you exploring all options. I know you looked at the Glen Road in the Palmer Park down there where we have Pop Warner, and that's not going to work out, but it was certainly explored. So I really appreciate you looking into this in depth and working with DPW closely to make sure we can find a good fit for our kids. And hey, we're all rooting for good weather. The season goes till almost the end of April, and I just want to wish the kids good luck. I think we all do. I think it's great that student athletes will be out there, and we're hoping the warm weather will be on their home turf sooner than later.
Agreed.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I just want to add, I do appreciate your efforts, Jeff, and DPW's efforts to try to make this as seamless as possible for the kids and to get them back on the field. It's important, and I know that you explored all avenues, and better than to continue to dig up the softball field or even the Papuana field or the Glen Road field, because I saw those markings out there, and that in itself is going to cause some issues in the springtime for our DPW to fix that so that the kids can play on that as well.
Right.
But I know you were stuck and you're caught in a difficult position, but I think you've done the best that we can do, and really that's why we have the turf field. So when we first talked about it at the Entile Committee, we said that these turf fields could be used year round, and here's our opportunity to check it out to see if that is true or not. So that was one of the purposes of putting a turf field there, so we
Right.
could use it in the winter months. So really thank you for your efforts on that.
First, Mr. Bauer, I'll just a question for clarification. So if by the time, and you stated that the first 3 games of the football season would be away games, but the next 2 and possibly 3 games would be home games, if the snow has thawed and melted by the time the first home game comes, it would be a possibility that the football team would be playing at the high school, correct?
Yeah, that's clearly the desire. I mean, in the conversations that I've had with Mia, we're all hopeful that by May 10th, which is the first home game, it's May 10th and May 17th, and then there's a possible game on the 24th. But I'm sorry, not May, April 10th. That by April 10th, we'll have enough warm weather and rain and to wash away all the snow, and they'll be able to play at the high school field. That's clearly the hope and expectation.
So the hope would be that certainly, at least for practicing for the first couple of weeks, would be at Yentile, and hopefully, and I guess knock on wood that we don't have the 16th month of 2020 coming up, and that the snow is gone by the time first home game comes around, right?
Right. I mean, we certainly can accommodate the football team through March in terms of using the Yentile, but we also have to be mindful that we've got lacrosse and soccer who typically use the Yentile, youth soccer, youth lacrosse typically use Yentile. So we want to make sure we don't deprive them of opportunities there as well. So it's kind of a juggling act.
All right, Mr. Bendel, I'd seen you raise your hand. I think Michelle Mahoney's waiting as well, so.
Happy to yield to my colleague. She hasn't had a chance.
No, I just wanted to say, I mean, it's insane what we're dealing with right now. I mean, to keep perspective, I have a senior in high school who's going to college, never having to sit for the SAT. And I have a senior in high school right now who may never experience a traditional prom. So trying to keep perspective for these kids to keep them in as normal a situation as possible right now is virtually impossible. So the fact that we have a football season beginning in March instead of September or August when double practices are supposed to be happening, we're all trying to work through all of this. And I think I would defer to Jeff and to the people who know the field situation and the best way to handle this, to get these kids on the field so that they can have some type of a season, because it's not going to be their traditional season. It obviously already can't be their traditional season. But I think we as kind of community members and parents need to keep perspective that the ultimate goal is to give our kids these opportunities as close to normal as we can in extremely unnormal times. So we need to really keep that in mind when we're having these discussions, that we can do Monday morning quarterbacks, in 2023 and look back at these few years of having to deal with this pandemic, hopefully, just 1 or 2 years. But the reality is right now we just need to get the kids on the field, whatever that field may be, so that they can have whatever their season is going to look like, and that the cheerleaders can have home games to participate in, and to put that out there for them, and not, complicate matters to the point where they're not given those opportunities because they've already had a lot taken away from them in this last year. So that's all I wanted to say, is that I appreciate everyone's comments. I appreciate what Jeff is dealing with and what the personnel are dealing with, but let's just pick a field and get the kids on it and give them some type of a season, so that they can say that they had it, at least, however it looks.
Thank you, Ms. Mahoney. Mr. Bendel?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to belabor the point, but obviously, given the fact of what's taken place and the fact that we have 2 beautiful turf fields, and who knows what the future holds for our community, maybe more turf in the future, we ought to, this board ought to look into the possibility of future budgeting for something that could clear snow from a synthetic turf. And that may be something we need to look into, given the fact that the 2 turf fields are going to be here, God willing, for a long time. And who knows, we could have more in the future. So no one ever thought we'd be playing, starting football practice today like they did, but here we are. So maybe it's something we ought to think about moving forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel. Mr. Hall, thank you for your efforts and DPW's efforts in making sure that we have a football season this winter and early spring.
Go Wildcats.
Go Wildcats. So, all right, that is the last item under communications. We have one board to consider item. It is a request of Dana Burnham, President of the Wilmington Farmers Market Association, to conduct the farmers market on Sundays, June 13th, 2021 through October 3, 2021, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I will briefly read her letter to us. The Wilmington Farmers Market is seeking approval from the Board of Selectmen to hold the market on the Swain Green on Sundays beginning June 13 through August 3, 2021. We would like to keep our established hours, with the market opening at 10 a.m. and ending at 1 p.m. Additionally, depending on the plans for the town's 4th of July celebration and its possible use of the Swain Green, we would ask that we could again have the July 4th market take place at the alternative location we've used in the past, Yentile Farm Recreational Facility, if it is available on that date. We have been in contact with the Board of Health and with Ms. Newhouse's guidance, are planning for an in-person market this year with the added COVID-19 precautions requiring masks and social distancing. We will also consider planning a curbside pickup component if we have market goers who are still uncomfortable with in-person activities. We think of this season as our 10th plus one, as our actual 10th anniversary did not go as we had hoped. Our sincere thanks to the Selectmen, the Town Manager, and the Board of Health who supported us through a difficult last season. We truly hope that this season will be one of many symbols of a return to some form of normalcy for Wilmington. Mr. Hall, just one question. Do we know if the Entile Farm Recreational Facility is available on July 4th if the Wilmington Farmers Market needs it?
Yes, there's should not be an issue with them using the area that they would typically use. They're not out on, they're using the area that is by the pavilion and in that area. So there's no issue there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hall. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to permit the Wilmington Farmers Market Association to use the Swain Green on Sundays from June 13th through October 3, 2021, from 10 a.m. in the morning to 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And if there is a 4th of July celebration that makes use of the Swain Green, that the Wilmington Farmers Market Association is permitted to make use of the Entile Farm Recreational Facility, again, from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Ms. O'Mahony, seconded by Mr. Cairo. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Mr. Bendel.
Yes.
Mr. Cairo.
Yes.
Mr. De Palma.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony.
Yes.
And I will make it unanimous with yes. Next, we are on to public comments. Mr. O'Neill, do you have any members of the public wishing to make comments?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. As a reminder, to make public comment, please dial 1-646-558-8656. You'll have to enter the meeting ID, which is 896-9547-8994. You'll have to press pound again, press pound and press pound again at the next voice prompt, and then you will need to raise a virtual hand by pressing *9. So I will hang on for a minute in case any members of the public care to call in and make public comment.
John loves those pictures of us.
I do appreciate the stubbornness in the many requests to change the pictures. I think it's an
Were those hints?
Mr. O'Neill, do you have any members of the, go ahead.
I'll do better.
No, I don't know if you can. It's going to be a challenge, but has anyone called in from the public, Mr. O'Neill?
No one. We have no callers.
All right, thank you, Mr. O'Neill. With that, I will close public comment. We will move to announcements. Are there any announcements tonight? Seeing none. Any new business?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Could I jump back to announcements?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to just let you know, I think you're doing a great job and you do a great service to the town. Really appreciate your volunteerism. It's a big sacrifice away from your beautiful family. I know you probably have 2 little ones sleeping right now, I hope.
You don't hear them in the background, so they're
like mine.
For now.
But just want to tell you, it's a real privilege to work with you. You do an awesome job. I know you're not going to continue much longer with us, but we're really lucky to have you. Your service to the town is much appreciated, and it's been an honor to serve with you.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel. I do appreciate it. Certainly, I got elected for 36 months. We're 34 months in. There's a lot of heavy lifting in the last 2 months that we have to go. So save, please, any comments that you have until you suffer through me boring the crap out of you for the next 2 months.
Are you suggesting I have more to say?
I want input on the highlight reel for the last meeting. I definitely want to make sure some of the highlights are captured appropriately.
I was at WCTV today.
Good.
I don't know if WCTV really wants to roll film with me quoting the bylaws. It'll be about as entertaining as my JV basketball highlights. Oh, look, you got off the bench that one time.
Well, they'll have you in your car.
All right, now we're on to new business. Enough shenanigans. Any new business? Seeing none. Mr. Hull, will you walk us through important dates?
Yes, tomorrow evening, 7 p.m., Finance Committee virtual. The Fire Department, Public Safety, Dispatch, and the police will be up. February 25th is the next Finance Committee meeting, 7 p.m., Town Clerk IT. March 2nd, Finance Committee virtual, 7 p.m., Shawshene Tech. March 4th is the Finance Committee, 7 p.m., Wilmington Public Schools. Selectmen meet again on the March 8th, 7 p.m. Then March 16th is the Finance Committee Planning Board Joint Public Hearing relative to the warrant, begins at 7 p.m. March 18th, the Finance Committee will meet virtually at 7 p.m. to review and determine their recommendations. Board of Selectmen meet again on March 22nd, 7 p.m. And as noted previously, the annual town meeting is on May 1st, 9 a.m., Shriners Auditorium, 99 Fordham Road.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. The last item on the agenda is our salute to service. Zach Mayo was a 2006 graduate of Wilmington High School and was captain of the football and basketball teams. After high school, Zach joined the United States Navy and deployed as a Navy corpsman to Afghanistan, where he earned the Combat Action Ribbon, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, and the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, among other awards and medals. Zach was an unbelievable combat medic during his deployment and earned the respect of all Marines he served with, who relied on Zach during combat to save their lives. Unfortunately, Zach succumbed to the invisible wounds of war and passed away in 2017. Rest in peace, sir, and thank you and your family for your service to our country. And with that, all items on the agenda having been addressed, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. O'Mahony, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Mr. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Kyra,
Yes.
Mr. DePalma,
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Good night, everyone.
Good night.